Charlie Wallace had spent 8 years convincing himself that the past belonged exactly where it was. Behind him, his Saturday afternoon had begun like dozens before it. The summer sun hung high above the quiet Connecticut neighborhood, while laughter drifted across the front yard. His 8-year-old twins, Grace and Gabriel, were arguing over whose turn it was to kick a worn soccer ball toward the small goal Charlie had built from leftover lumber the previous spring. "You moved it," Gabriel protested. "I didn't," Grace answered, laughing as she grabbed the ball before her brother could reach it. Charlie leaned against the porch railing with a glass of iced tea in one hand. A faint smile settled across his face as he watched them race through the grass. Libby stepped outside carrying another glass. "I figured yours was getting warm." Charlie accepted it with a grateful smile. "Thank you." She looked toward the children. "They've been out here almost 2 hours. They're finally wearing each other out instead of us." Libby laughed quietly. "I wouldn't count on that lasting." Charlie shook his head. "Probably not." The peaceful afternoon felt ordinary. That was exactly why he loved it. For years he had chased a life that didn't depend on headlines, expensive parties, family expectations, or business titles. He had traded all of that for scraped knees, neighborhood cookouts, homework spread across the dining table, and evenings that ended with tired children falling asleep halfway through bedtime stories. It wasn't the life he had been raised to expect. It was better. Gabriel suddenly pointed toward the street. "Dad?" Charlie followed his son's finger. A black luxury SUV turned slowly onto their road. He barely paid attention at first. Delivery drivers often stopped somewhere nearby, and visitors occasionally drove through looking for the correct address. The SUV continued moving. Slower. Its turn signal blinked. Instead of passing the house, it eased toward the curb directly in front of Charlie's home. The engine remained running for several seconds. Nobody stepped out. Charlie felt something he couldn't explain settle in the pit of his stomach. Libby noticed his expression. "What is it?" "I don't know." His eyes never left the vehicle. The windows were heavily tinted, making it impossible to see inside. Grace bounced the soccer ball toward the porch. "Dad, watch this." Charlie forced himself to smile. "I'm watching." She kicked the ball. It rolled neatly between the wooden posts. Gabriel threw both hands into the air. "That doesn't count. You were too close." Grace laughed. "It absolutely counts." Normally, Charlie would have joined the debate. Today, he barely heard them. The driver's door finally opened. An older man stepped onto the pavement. Charlie forgot how to breathe. His father. Time had changed him. His shoulders no longer stood as straight as Charlie remembered. His hair had turned almost completely silver. Deep lines surrounded eyes that once seemed impossible to intimidate. For a brief second, Charlie wondered if he was mistaken. Then his mother climbed out from the passenger side. She looked smaller somehow, older. The confidence that had always surrounded her had faded into visible exhaustion. A second door opened. His Uncle Harlan stepped out. Next came his cousin Brenner. Finally, the Wallace family's longtime attorney climbed from the back seat carrying a thick leather folder beneath one arm. Charlie didn't move. Neither did they. The distance between the sidewalk and the porch measured only a few yards. To Charlie, it felt like 8 years. Not one of them had stood beside him when he married Libby. Not one had visited the hospital when Grace and Gabriel arrived 7 weeks early and spent their first weeks fighting for every ounce they gained. Not one had picked up the phone when medical bills filled their mailbox. Not one had appeared while he repaired leaking ceilings, worried about overdue payments, or worked 16-hour days trying to build a business from a converted garage. Silence had been their only message, until now. Libby slowly placed her hand on Charlie's arm. "You know them." It wasn't a question. Charlie nodded once. "I do." She looked carefully at each face gathering near the driveway. "They're your family." Charlie swallowed before answering. "They used to be." None of the visitors smiled. None waved. They simply stood there looking toward the porch, as though unsure whether they still had the right to walk any closer. Charlie set his glass on the porch railing. His heartbeat had begun pounding hard enough for him to hear it. Whatever had brought them here after 8 years, it wasn't a social visit. Welcome to Will and Rye's stories. To every single person listening right now, thank you for being here. This channel is growing because of people like you who truly love emotional, unforgettable storytelling. Please support the channel by subscribing. Charlie looked into Grace's curious eyes. They're relatives. Grace nodded slowly, trying to understand. Then why have we never met them before? The question settled over the front yard. Charlie's father lowered his eyes. His mother looked away. Not one person answered. Charlie rested a hand on Grace's shoulder. It's a long story. Grace accepted the answer, but Charlie knew one day she would learn the whole truth. As he looked at the people standing in his driveway, memories he had buried for years came rushing back. 8 years earlier, Charlie Wallace had grown up believing his family was respected because they always did the right thing. That was what his father taught him inside the Wallace estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. The house had been in the family for generations. Every hallway displayed portraits of relatives who had built businesses, donated to charities, and protected the Wallace name. When Charlie was a boy, his grandfather often reminded him of one lesson. A good family name is worth more than money. Charlie believed every word. He admired his parents. He admired his grandparents. He believed they treated people fairly because that was how they presented themselves to the world. As Charlie grew older, he began noticing things that never made sense to him. His parents rarely insulted anyone in public. They waited until they were alone. After charity dinners, they criticized people they had just smiled beside. After business events, they judged families by where they lived, how they dressed, and who they associated with. Charlie sat quietly during those conversations. The older he became, the more uncomfortable he felt. He often wondered why kindness disappeared the moment other people weren't listening. By the time he entered college, he wanted to spend time away from that environment. Instead of joining networking clubs that attracted wealthy students, Charlie volunteered through a community outreach program that supported children with developmental disabilities. His parents didn't understand why. His father called it a waste of time. Charlie ignored the criticism. The first morning he reported to the Children's Therapy Center changed his life. The building wasn't impressive. There were no marble floors, no expensive artwork, no people trying to impress each other. Children filled the hallways with laughter. Parents waited patiently beside therapy rooms, celebrating every small improvement their children made. That was where Charlie first met Libby Doran. She greeted him with a warm smile while organizing therapy equipment for the morning sessions. "You must be the new volunteer." Charlie smiled. "I hope that's a good thing." "It is if you're willing to help." "I am." She handed him a box of colorful toys. "Perfect." Charlie followed her into one of the therapy rooms. He expected to spend the morning watching. Instead, Libby immediately included him. She showed him how to encourage nervous children without rushing them. She celebrated every little success. When one little boy finally stacked a few wooden blocks without help, Libby smiled as though he had won an Olympic medal. Charlie couldn't help smiling too. "You really love this job." "I do." "You celebrate every little achievement." Because for these families, those little achievements mean everything. Charlie had never looked at life that way. Where he grew up, people celebrated promotions, expensive homes, and financial success. Libby celebrated a child learning to hold a spoon. To her, both victories mattered because both changed someone's life. That stayed with Charlie. Over the following months, he continued volunteering. He and Libby worked together almost every weekend. Neither of them tried to impress the other. Their conversations were simple. They talked while cleaning therapy rooms. They talked while organizing supplies. They talked while helping children during activities. Charlie noticed something different about Libby. She never asked about his family's wealth. She never cared about the Wallace name. She judged him only by the way he treated people. For the first time in years, Charlie felt completely comfortable being himself. Some evenings they stopped for coffee after finishing their volunteer work. Other weekends they joined neighborhood projects, repainting classrooms or preparing school supplies before the new school year. Charlie found himself looking forward to those ordinary days far more than formal dinners at the Wallace estate. One Saturday afternoon, Libby smiled as they finished loading boxes into a storage room. "My aunt invited a few neighbors over for lunch tomorrow." Charlie looked up. "That sounds nice." "It is." She laughed. "But I should warn you." "About what?" My Aunt Corinne believes nobody should leave her house hungry. Charlie laughed. I think I can survive that. You've been warned. The next afternoon, Charlie arrived expecting a quiet family meal. Instead, the backyard was full of people. Children chased each other across the grass. Neighbors carried homemade dishes through the gate without waiting to be invited. Someone brought fresh vegetables from a community garden. Another family arrived carrying homemade peach cobbler. Nobody seemed concerned about appearances. Everyone simply helped each other. Before Charlie had time to introduce himself, Aunt Corinne handed him a stack of folding chairs. Young man, if you're standing still, you're available. Charlie laughed. Yes, ma'am. Within minutes, he was arranging chairs, carrying coolers, and helping wherever he was needed. Nobody asked him where he lived. Nobody asked what his family owned. Nobody cared about the Wallace name. They cared whether he was willing to help. As everyone gathered around the picnic tables later that afternoon, Charlie quietly watched the conversations around him. People laughed. They shared food. They talked about their children, their jobs, and their neighbors. Nobody tried to prove they were more important than anyone else. Aunt Corinne noticed Charlie looking around. You seem surprised. Charlie smiled honestly. I guess I am. What surprised you? I've never seen so many people enjoy being together without trying to impress each other. Aunt Corinne looked around the yard before smiling. Real family doesn't spend time proving its value. Charlie never forgot those words. As the afternoon came to an end, he realized something had quietly changed inside him. For the first time in his life, he understood that respect could never be measured by wealth. It was measured by how people treated each other when nobody expected anything in return. That lesson would soon change the course of his entire life. Charlie and Libby's friendship continued to grow over the next year. Nothing about their relationship felt rushed. They learned each other's habits before they spoke about love. Charlie discovered that Libby enjoyed restoring old furniture instead of buying new pieces. Libby learned that Charlie always stayed behind after volunteer events until every chair was folded and every table was clean. She noticed he never helped because someone was watching. He simply believed it was the right thing to do. During evening walks, they talked about life. They spoke about faith, about family, about children they hoped to have one day, about mistakes they had made and lessons they had learned. Neither of them pretended to be perfect. That honesty became the strongest part of their relationship. One Saturday evening, Charlie invited Libby to a neighborhood park where they often walked together. The sun was beginning to set as they reached a quiet path beside a small lake. Libby smiled. You've hardly said a word since we got here. Charlie laughed. I'm trying to. Trying to what? Keep a secret. She looked at him. That doesn't sound like you. It isn't. Charlie stopped walking. He reached into his pocket and took out a small ring box. Libby's eyes widened. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Charlie looked directly at her. I don't have the perfect speech. You don't need one. I only know one thing. What is it? I've never met anyone who makes me want to become a better man every single day. He opened the box. Libby Doran. He smiled. Will you marry me? Tears filled her eyes before she even looked at the ring. She laughed softly. I thought we were coming here to talk about work. I tried. And? I couldn't wait. Libby nodded through her tears. Yes. Charlie slipped the ring onto her finger. She wrapped both arms around him. For several minutes, neither of them cared about anything except the future they were beginning together. A week later, Charlie decided it was time to tell his parents. His father invited both of them to dinner at the Wallace estate. Charlie believed it was a good sign. Maybe his family simply needed time. Maybe they would see Libby the way he did. Libby wore a simple navy blue dress and carried flowers for Charlie's mother. She wanted to make a good first impression. Dinner began politely. They talked about work, travel, the weather. Everything seemed normal. Then Charlie's father looked at Libby. Where did you grow up? She answered honestly. He asked about her parents. Libby quietly explained that they had died when she was young and that her Aunt Corinne had raised her. Charlie's mother gave a polite smile. It disappeared almost immediately. More questions followed. What schools did you attend? What church do you attend? Do you think you'll be comfortable around our family's social circle? Charlie recognized what was happening. They weren't trying to know Libby. They were measuring her. Libby answered every question with calm confidence. She never became defensive. She never allowed anyone to make her feel small. When dinner ended, Charlie believed the evening had gone well enough. He couldn't have been more wrong. The following weekend, Charlie received another invitation. His father asked him to return to the Wallace estate. When Charlie and Libby arrived, nearly every close Wallace relative was waiting inside the library. The room felt cold. Nobody smiled. Charlie's father stood beside the fireplace. His mother sat quietly nearby. Charlie looked around. "What's going on?" His father answered without hesitation. "This marriage cannot happen." Charlie stared at him. "I'm sorry?" "You heard me." Charlie looked toward his mother. She remained silent. His father continued, "Our family has responsibilities that come before personal feelings." Charlie shook his head. "My responsibility is to the woman I love." His father's voice became firm. "Your responsibility is to generations of Wallaces who built everything you enjoy. I'm not asking for permission." His father stepped closer. "If you marry her, every financial benefit ends." Charlie didn't answer. No inheritance. Still nothing. No position in the family business. Charlie reached for Libby's hand. She held it tightly. His father noticed. "You can still fix this." Charlie looked him in the eye. "There is nothing to fix." The room became completely quiet. His father slowly nodded. "So you've made your decision?" "I have." Charlie's mother finally stood. She walked toward him carrying the Wallace signet ring his grandfather had given him on his 21st birthday. Charlie thought she was coming to hug him. Instead, she gently removed the ring from his finger. Her voice stayed calm. "From today forward, you are no longer a Wallace, except by blood." Those words hurt more than Charlie expected. He looked around the room. His uncle said nothing. His cousins avoided his eyes. Nobody defended him. Nobody objected. Libby quietly stepped beside him. Without saying another word, Charlie turned toward the door. Together, they walked out of the Wallace estate. Neither of them looked back. Outside, they stopped at the bottom of the front steps. Charlie took a long breath. Everything he had grown up with was gone. His family, his inheritance, his future in the Wallace business. Libby gently held both of his hands. "You don't have to do this." Charlie looked at her. "I already have." "You've lost everything." Charlie smiled. "No." He squeezed her hands. "I walked away with the one person who never asked me to become someone else." A tear rolled down Libby's cheek. "We'll build our own life." Charlie nodded. "From the beginning." They walked toward Charlie's old pickup parked across the street. They had no idea how difficult the coming years would become. They only knew one thing. Whatever they faced next, they would face it together. 6 weeks after leaving the Wallace estate, Charlie and Libby stood inside a small white church just outside Hartford. There were no television cameras, no expensive decorations, no famous guests, no Wallace family members. The church was nearly full because every person sitting there truly wanted to celebrate with them. Aunt Corinne smiled through tears from the front row. Rhett stood beside Charlie as his best man. Pastor Elias looked at the couple before beginning the ceremony. "Marriage isn't tested on the wedding day," he said. "It's tested during ordinary days, unexpected bills, hard seasons, and the choice to keep loving each other through all of it." Charlie looked at Libby. She smiled back without hesitation. When Pastor Elias asked if Charlie would love and honor Libby for the rest of his life, his answer came immediately. "I will." Libby's answer was just as certain. "I will." Minutes later, they exchanged rings. Pastor Elias smiled. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." The church erupted with applause. Charlie kissed Libby as everyone stood to celebrate. For the first time since leaving his family behind, he felt completely at peace. The reception took place in the church fellowship hall. Friends prepared the meal themselves. There was fried chicken, baked macaroni, collard greens, cornbread, potato salad, peach cobbler. Nobody complained that the wedding wasn't expensive. Nobody compared it to society weddings in Greenwich. The room was filled with laughter instead of appearances. Aunt Corinne hugged Libby. "You've married a good man." Libby smiled. "I know." Rhett shook Charlie's hand. "You ready for married life?" Charlie laughed. "I'll let you know in a few years." Everyone laughed with him. 2 days later, real life began. The Wallace family lawyers completed every document Charlie's father had promised. Charlie's inheritance disappeared. His trust accounts were closed. His access to the Wallace business ended. The company vehicle assigned to him was returned. The apartment connected to the family business was no longer available. Everything happened exactly as his father had warned. Charlie packed his belongings into an old pickup. It wasn't much. Most of what he had once used belonged to the Wallace family. Libby watched him loading the last box. "You all right?" Charlie nodded. "I will be." She took his hand. "We're starting our own story now." He smiled. "That's exactly what we're doing." They rented a small 2-bedroom townhouse outside New Haven. The house wasn't perfect. The kitchen cabinets were loose. The paint needed fresh coats. The washing machine rattled every time it ran. The roof leaked whenever heavy rain arrived. Charlie looked around on the first evening. "It needs work." Libby smiled. "So do we." They laughed together. Instead of complaining, they started fixing one room at a time. Charlie repaired broken shelves after work. He tightened loose doors. He painted the walls on weekends. Libby planted flowers beside the front porch. She hung simple curtains inside the living room. Little by little, the townhouse stopped feeling like a rental. It became home. Charlie accepted an operations job with a regional food distribution company. The pay was modest. The hours were long. Most mornings, he left before sunrise. Many evenings, he returned after dark. Libby continued working as a pediatric occupational therapist. She loved every child she treated. Parents often thanked her for giving their children confidence they never thought possible. The work filled her heart. The paycheck barely covered their bills. Every Friday evening, they sat together at the kitchen table. Charlie opened a notebook. Rent, utilities, insurance, student loans, gas, groceries. Every dollar had a purpose. Libby searched grocery advertisements before every shopping trip. Charlie repaired things instead of replacing them. When the old coffee maker stopped working, he fixed it. When the dining chairs became loose, he repaired them. Every dollar they saved mattered. Some months, they had only a small amount left after paying every bill. Instead of arguing, they encouraged each other. "We're making progress," Libby would say. Charlie smiled. "1 week at a time." She reached across the table. "One day we'll look back at this." Charlie squeezed her hand. "And we'll know we built everything together." That thought gave both of them something wealth never had. Every improvement inside that little townhouse had been earned. Every meal on the table came from honest work. Every dream they shared belonged completely to them. For the first time in his life, Charlie wasn't living inside someone else's expectations. He was building a future with the woman who had stood beside him when everyone else walked away. Nearly 2 years passed. Charlie and Libby settled into a routine. They worked hard. They paid every bill they could. They kept improving their little townhouse, one project at a time. Life wasn't easy, but it was peaceful. One evening, Libby walked into the kitchen carrying 2 small boxes. She placed them on the table without saying a word. Charlie looked at them. Then he looked at her. "Are those?" Libby smiled through tears. "Yes." Charlie picked up one of the boxes. His hands trembled. "We're having a baby." Libby laughed. "Look at the other one." Charlie opened it. Another positive test. He looked at Libby in disbelief. "Twins?" She nodded. "We're having twins." Charlie wrapped his arms around her. For several minutes they laughed, cried, and held each other in the middle of the kitchen. Their little townhouse suddenly felt much smaller. "It looks like I'll be building 2 cribs instead of 1, Charlie said. Libby smiled. "And you'll probably need more shelves." Charlie laughed. "I'll build those too." They began planning immediately. Charlie converted the spare bedroom into a nursery. He painted the walls himself. He repaired an old rocking chair instead of buying a new one. Friends from church donated baby clothes, blankets, and toys. Aunt Corinne arrived with boxes filled with things she had carefully saved over the years. "I knew these would help someone one day," she said. Libby hugged her tightly. "Thank you." Months passed, and every doctor's appointment brought good news. Then, everything changed. During a routine checkup, the doctor looked at Libby's blood pressure. His expression became serious. "We need to watch this closely." Charlie immediately sat forward. "Is something wrong?" "Her blood pressure is much higher than it should be." The doctor explained that Libby would need regular monitoring and much more rest. Charlie didn't argue. From that day forward, he handled almost everything at home. He cooked dinner. He cleaned the house. He finished repairs after Libby had gone to bed. Every evening, he asked the same question. "How are you feeling?" Libby always smiled. "I'm all right." But Charlie could see the exhaustion on her face. 7 weeks before the babies were due, Libby woke Charlie before sunrise. "Charlie." He sat up immediately. "What is it?" "I think it's time." He looked at the clock, then at her. The contractions were coming fast. Within minutes, they were driving toward the hospital. Charlie held Libby's hand whenever traffic stopped. "You've got this." She nodded, trying to stay calm. Hours later, the doctors made the decision to deliver the babies early. Charlie waited outside the operating room, praying harder than he ever had before. Finally, a nurse opened the door. "You have a daughter." Charlie's face filled with relief. "And a son." He smiled. "They're here?" "They're here." The smile faded when the nurse continued. "They're both premature. They'll need intensive care." Charlie followed the medical team into the neonatal intensive care unit. Tiny incubators stood beside each other. Grace lay inside one. Gabriel rested inside the other. They were so small that Charlie struggled to believe they would become the energetic children he had imagined. Machines surrounded both babies. Monitors tracked every heartbeat, every breath. Charlie stood beside them without speaking. Libby was brought into the unit later that day. She reached for Charlie's hand. "They're strong." Charlie nodded. "They are." The next several weeks became the hardest period of their marriage. Charlie worked during the day. Every evening, he drove straight to the hospital. Most nights he stayed until visiting hours ended. Libby spent every possible moment beside the twins. Some days the doctors shared encouraging news. The babies gained weight. Their breathing improved. Another tube was removed. Other days brought fresh worries. Charlie learned not to celebrate too early. He learned to be grateful for every small improvement. Then the hospital bills began arriving. Charlie opened the first envelope at the kitchen table. He quietly read every page. Insurance covered part of the cost. The remaining balance was overwhelming. He folded the papers before Libby could see his expression. That weekend he sold several possessions he still owned. His grandfather's watch, an antique desk, golf clubs he hadn't touched in years. Nothing mattered more than bringing Grace and Gabriel home. One evening Charlie sat outside the hospital, holding another stack of bills. Rhett found him there. "You've been quiet." Charlie handed him the papers. "I don't know how we're going to catch up." Rhett looked through them. "You will." Charlie shook his head. "I've never felt this overwhelmed." Rhett sat beside him. "Your family isn't asking for perfection." Charlie looked toward the hospital entrance. "They're counting on me, and you're showing up every day." Charlie looked down. "I don't want Libby worrying about this." Rhett smiled. "She already knows you're worried." That evening, Charlie stopped pretending everything was fine. He sat beside Libby's bed. "I'm scared." Libby looked at him. "So am I." He took her hand. "I don't know how long it'll take us to recover from this." She squeezed his fingers. "We don't have to solve everything today." Charlie nodded. "We just keep moving. Together." Charlie smiled for the first time in days. Together. Several weeks later, the doctor delivered the news they had been praying for. "Your babies are ready to go home." Charlie looked at Grace, then at Gabriel. He felt tears fill his eyes. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every bill, every difficult day had been worth it. He carried one baby carrier. Libby carried the other. Together they walked out of the hospital as a family of 4. For Charlie, it wasn't the end of a difficult season. It was the beginning of a new reason to keep fighting. Bringing Grace and Gabriel home changed everything. The little townhouse suddenly felt full. Bottles covered the kitchen counter. Blankets rested over the couch. 2 cribs filled the spare bedroom. Charlie and Libby slept whenever they had the chance. Usually that wasn't for long. When Grace fell asleep, Gabriel woke up. When Gabriel finished a bottle, Grace wanted one. They smiled through the exhaustion because every cry reminded them their children were finally home. Life slowly settled into a routine. Charlie worked during the day. Libby cared for the twins before returning to the Children's Rehabilitation Hospital when her leave ended. Every Friday night, they still sat at the kitchen table to review their bills. Hospital payments remained the biggest challenge. Charlie studied the numbers. "We're getting there." Libby smiled. "We always are." One Monday morning, Charlie left before sunrise to begin another delivery route for the Regional Food Distribution Company. His job took him across Connecticut and western Massachusetts. He visited schools, hospitals, retirement communities, small grocery stores. He also stopped at family farms to collect fresh produce. One afternoon, he noticed something strange. One farm had beautiful tomatoes sitting in wooden crates. Another had fresh corn ready for harvest. A third had vegetables waiting beside the loading dock. Yet much of it wasn't being shipped. Charlie walked over to one of the farmers. "I've noticed this a few times." The farmer nodded. "We grow more than we can sell." Charlie looked across the fields. "How is that possible? The large distributors don't want small farms. What happens to the extra food?" "Some gets donated." He pointed toward another field. "The rest goes bad." Charlie couldn't stop thinking about that answer. Later that same day, he delivered food to a school cafeteria. The kitchen manager looked frustrated. "I wish we could buy more fresh produce." Charlie asked why they didn't. "It costs too much." As Charlie drove away, one thought stayed with him. The farms had food. The schools needed food. Somewhere between them, the system was failing. That evening he spread a road map across the kitchen table. Libby watched him marking different towns with a pencil. "What are you working on?" "I've been seeing the same problem everywhere." She pulled out a chair. "What problem?" Charlie pointed at the map. "These small farms can't reach enough buyers." He moved his finger toward several school districts. "These schools can't afford enough fresh produce." Libby studied the map. "So the food isn't the problem." Charlie nodded. "Getting it to the right people is." She smiled. "What are you thinking?" "I think somebody should connect them." She looked at him. "Why not you?" Charlie laughed. "I've never owned a business." "You'd never been a husband before either." He smiled. "You figured that out." The idea stayed with him. A few days later, Charlie invited Rhett to the townhouse. The 3 of them gathered in the garage after the twins had gone to sleep. Charlie spread several handwritten pages across an old folding table. Rhett looked them over. "So, you want to start a distribution company?" Charlie shook his head. "I want to build partnerships." "Between who?" "Small farms." He pointed at one list. "Schools." Another list. "Hospitals." Then retirement communities. They all need each other. Rhett smiled. "I like it. But we'll need help." Charlie nodded. "I know." Rhett immediately suggested one person. "Celine Avery." "Who's that?" "An accountant. She helps small businesses get started." A few days later, Charlie met Celine. She carefully read every page of his business plan. When she finished, she looked at him. "How much money do you have?" Charlie smiled awkwardly. "Not much." "Investors?" "No." "Collateral?" Charlie pointed toward the garage. "This is about it." Celine laughed. "I appreciate honest answers." She spent another hour reviewing his numbers. Finally, she closed the folder. "The budget is tight." "I know. The work will be hard." "I expected that." She nodded. "But the idea makes sense." Charlie leaned forward. "You really think so?" "I do." She smiled. if you're willing to grow slowly. Charlie looked at Libby. She smiled before he even spoke. Let's do it. The business started. Inside that garage, there was no fancy office, no expensive furniture, no ribbon cutting. Charlie answered customer calls from an old desk. Rhett made deliveries whenever he wasn't working his regular job. Celine handled every invoice and every expense. Libby helped after finishing her hospital shifts. Some evenings she answered emails while rocking one of the twins to sleep. Other nights she labeled delivery boxes. Their first customers were small: a church food pantry, a neighborhood grocery store, one local school, a retirement community. Each successful delivery brought another recommendation. The company grew because people trusted Charlie. One rainy morning, a refrigerated truck broke down during an important delivery. Charlie borrowed another vehicle. He transferred every box himself. He arrived hours later, expecting to lose the customer. Instead, the kitchen manager smiled. You kept calling to update us. Charlie apologized for being late. You were honest. The manager nodded. That's why we'll keep working with you. Driving home, Charlie understood something. People could forgive mistakes. They remembered honesty. A few months later, another company offered Charlie a high-paying management job. The salary was far better than anything he had earned. The benefits were excellent. There was one condition. He had to stop working with the small farms. Charlie didn't need time to think. No. The executive looked surprised. You'd make much more money. Charlie smiled. I didn't start this for the money. He stood up. I started it because people deserved better. He walked out of the meeting without looking back. That evening, Charlie returned home. Libby was waiting on the porch. How did it go? I turned it down. She wasn't surprised. You made the right decision. Charlie looked toward the garage where their small business had begun. It may take longer this way. Libby slipped her hand into his. We've never been afraid of hard work. Charlie smiled. No. He looked at the light shining from the garage window. We're building something that treats people fairly. For Charlie, that mattered more than becoming rich. Charlie looked at the garage one more time before going inside. He knew the business could fail. He knew money would remain tight for a long time. Even so, he chose to risk the little security he had left because he believed honesty, fairness, and hard work would build something worth leaving to Grace and Gabriel. The first year tested Charlie's company almost every week. Some mornings the phone never stopped ringing. Other mornings it stayed completely quiet. Every new customer mattered. Every canceled order hurt. Charlie arrived at the garage before sunrise. He checked delivery schedules. He loaded trucks. He answered customer calls. When drivers finished their routes, he stayed behind to complete invoices before going home. Libby often found him working late. You should get some rest. Charlie smiled. I'll sleep after I finish these. She placed a sandwich beside him. Then at least eat first. He laughed. Yes, ma'am. Money stayed tight. Some customers paid late. Fuel prices increased. Repair bills arrived without warning. Every unexpected expense forced Charlie to adjust the budget. One Monday morning, the refrigerated truck stopped working halfway through a delivery. Charlie climbed out and checked the engine. Nothing. He called Rhett immediately. The truck's down. I'll be there. Within 30 minutes, Rhett arrived with another vehicle. The two men transferred every box by hand. Fresh vegetables, milk, fruit. Everything had to be moved quickly. Charlie looked at his watch. We're already behind. Rhett closed the truck doors. Then let's keep moving. They finished the delivery several hours late. Charlie expected the customer to cancel the contract. Instead, the kitchen manager greeted him with a smile. I've been getting your updates. Charlie apologized. I know we're late. You called every step of the way. Charlie nodded. I wanted you to know what was happening. The manager accepted the paperwork. Most companies stop answering the phone when something goes wrong. Charlie looked surprised. We don't. I noticed. The manager smiled. We'll keep working together. Charlie thanked her before returning to the truck. Driving away, he smiled. The delivery had been late. The relationship had grown stronger. Over the next several months, more customers heard about Charlie's company, not because every delivery was perfect, because every customer felt respected. Whenever a mistake happened, Charlie never blamed someone else. He called personally. He explained the situation. He accepted responsibility. People remembered that. One afternoon, a school cafeteria received fewer vegetables than expected. Charlie discovered the mistake before the school even called. He immediately loaded the missing order into another truck. Less than an hour later, he walked into the cafeteria himself. "I'm sorry." The kitchen manager looked at the boxes. "You drove these here yourself?" Charlie nodded. "The mistake was ours." She smiled. "Thank you for fixing it." Charlie learned another lesson that day. People rarely expected perfection. They expected honesty. As the company slowly grew, Charlie refused to change the way he treated people. He visited farms personally. He shook hands with every owner. He listened before discussing business. He learned which families struggled during dry seasons. He learned which schools needed flexible payment plans. He learned which hospitals depended on deliveries arriving before sunrise. Those conversations mattered as much as contracts. One evening, Charlie returned home long after dark. Grace and Gabriel had already fallen asleep. Libby placed dinner on the table. "Tough day?" Charlie smiled. "Busy day." She sat beside him. "That's different." Charlie nodded. "It is." He looked toward the hallway where the twins were sleeping. "I'm tired." Libby reached across the table. "But you're happy." Charlie smiled again. "I finally feel like people trust us." Libby squeezed his hand. "They trust you because you never stop doing the right thing." Charlie looked around the little townhouse. The business still wasn't making them wealthy. Some months were still difficult. But something much more valuable was beginning to happen. Every customer who stayed, every farmer who recommended another farmer, every school that renewed a contract, every honest conversation, they were building something money alone could never buy. They were earning trust. 3 years passed after Charlie started the company. The garage was no longer large enough. He rented a small warehouse on the edge of town. It wasn't impressive, but it gave the business room to grow. The trucks now carried the company logo. More schools signed contracts. More hospitals trusted Charlie's team. More family farms called every month. The company finally began making a steady profit. One afternoon, Celine walked into Charlie's office, carrying several folders. She placed them on his desk. "We've received 3 offers." Charlie looked up. "What kind of offers?" "Large food distributors." He opened the first folder. The numbers immediately caught his attention. The company wanted to buy most of Charlie's delivery routes. The payment was enough to erase every remaining debt. The second offer promised even more money. The third offered Charlie an executive position with an impressive salary. He quietly finished reading every page. Then he looked at Celine. "What's the catch?" She already knew he would ask. "They only want the high-volume accounts." Charlie frowned. "And the small farms?" "They wouldn't qualify." Charlie closed the folders. "So they'd lose their transportation." Celine nodded. "Most likely." Charlie leaned back in his chair. He remembered the first farmers who had trusted him when nobody else would. Families who had shaken his hand before his company owned more than one truck. People who had believed in him before he had proven anything. He couldn't forget that. Later that evening, he drove to one of the farms. The owner greeted him with a smile. "Didn't expect to see you today." Charlie smiled. "I was nearby." The farmer showed him rows of fresh vegetables waiting for the next morning's pickup. "If your company hadn't started working with us," he said, "I don't know if we'd still be here." Charlie listened quietly. "My grandchildren want to keep this farm going." He looked across the fields. "Now they actually have a chance." Charlie drove home thinking about those words. The next morning, he called Celine into his office. "I've made my decision." She smiled. "I think I already know it." Charlie pushed every offer back across the desk. "We're declining all of them." Celine nodded. "I'll let them know." Within hours, one executive called Charlie directly. "I think you're making a mistake." Charlie remained calm. "Why?" "You'll never receive another offer like this." Charlie smiled. I didn't build this company just to sell it. You could retire early. Charlie shook his head. There are people depending on us. They'll find someone else. Charlie answered immediately. They already tried. They chose us because nobody else wanted them. The executive sighed. Business isn't personal. Charlie replied without hesitation. It is when people trust you. He ended the call. That evening, Charlie arrived home earlier than usual. Grace and Gabriel were waiting in the living room. Both children were now old enough to ask questions about Charlie's work. Grace climbed onto the couch beside him. Dad? Yes? Why do you leave so early every morning? Charlie smiled. So families can receive food. Gabriel looked up from the floor. You drive trucks? Charlie laughed. Sometimes. Do you own the trucks? I help take care of them. Grace thought for a moment. Does your job help people? Charlie nodded. That's the reason I do it. Gabriel smiled. Can I help when I get bigger? Charlie rubbed his son's head. I'd like that. During dinner, Grace noticed several papers beside Charlie's plate. What are those? Business papers. Good papers? Charlie looked at Libby before answering. They could have made us a lot of money. Grace smiled. Did you say yes? Charlie shook his head. No. Why? Before Charlie could answer, Libby smiled. Because your dad made a promise. Grace looked confused. What promise? Charlie answered gently. I promised people that I'd help them grow. Gabriel looked at him. So, you kept your promise? Charlie smiled. I did. The children nodded, as though the answer made perfect sense. After they went to bed, Charlie and Libby sat on the front porch. The neighborhood had become quiet. Charlie looked toward the stars. Sometimes, I wonder if I made the right choice. Libby smiled. Do you remember our first apartment? Charlie laughed. It leaked every time it rained. And we still thanked God for it. Charlie nodded. Do you remember bringing Grace and Gabriel home? I'll never forget it. You didn't build this company because you wanted to become rich. Charlie looked at her. No, you built it because you wanted people to be treated fairly. Charlie smiled. I still believe that. Libby reached for his hand. Then nothing has changed. Charlie looked toward the warehouse several miles away. Every truck, every employee, every farmer, every customer, they all existed because someone had chosen people over easy money. Libby squeezed his hand. We're not only building a company. Charlie smiled. I know. We're building something Grace and Gabriel will be proud to continue one day. Charlie looked through the front window at his sleeping children. For the first time, he realized the business was never going to be his greatest achievement. The values behind it would be. The years passed faster than Charlie ever imagined. The little warehouse became too small. Then the second warehouse reached its limit. More refrigerated trucks joined the fleet. More drivers came to work each month. Every new employee received the same message on the first day. Charlie stood in front of the group. Our company has one rule. Everyone listened. We keep our word. He looked around the room. If we make a mistake, we admit it. He continued. If a customer calls, we answer. He pointed toward the loading docks. If a farmer needs help, we don't ignore them because they're small. The employees nodded. Charlie smiled. That's how we do business. The culture spread through the company. Drivers called customers before delays became problems. Warehouse teams stayed late when hospitals needed emergency deliveries. Office staff returned every phone call before leaving for the day. Customers noticed the difference. So did the farmers. One by one, more family farms joined Charlie's network. Many had nearly closed before finding reliable transportation. Now they hired more workers, expanded their fields, bought better equipment. Schools noticed the improvement as well. Students received fresher fruits and vegetables. Hospitals received dependable deliveries every morning. Retirement communities praised the consistent service. The company kept growing because trust kept growing. Grace and Gabriel were no longer toddlers. They were 8 years old. Every Saturday morning, they visited the warehouse with Charlie. Grace enjoyed helping organize paperwork. Gabriel followed the mechanics around the trucks. One morning, Gabriel pointed toward a driver finishing a delivery. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Why does everyone smile when they see you?" Charlie laughed. "You should ask them." The driver overheard the question. He smiled at Gabriel. "Your dad gave me my first job after I lost mine." Another employee walked over. "He gave me a second chance when nobody else would." A warehouse supervisor joined them. "He believed in me before I believed in myself." Grace looked proudly at her father. Charlie smiled. "I didn't build this place alone." He looked around the warehouse. "All of us did." The children never forgot that answer. Later that year, Celine entered Charlie's office carrying another folder. "This one's different." Charlie smiled. "Good different or bad different?" "Very good." She handed him the documents. A respected regional transportation network wanted to partner with Charlie's company instead of buying it. The agreement would allow small farms to reach markets throughout New England while keeping Charlie's business independent. Charlie spent hours reading every page. There was no hidden condition, no demand to abandon small farmers, no attempt to take control, only an opportunity to help thousands more families. Charlie looked at Celine. "This is exactly what we hoped for." She smiled. "I thought you'd say that." The partnership was finalized a few months later. Almost immediately, the company expanded into new states across New England. More trucks joined the fleet. More employees were hired. More farms signed agreements. The waiting list for new customers continued growing. Charlie still visited farms personally whenever possible. He still answered customer calls. He still walked through the warehouse every morning, greeting employees by name. Nothing about his success changed the way he treated people. One afternoon, a television reporter arrived at headquarters. She asked to interview Charlie about the company's rapid growth. He almost declined. Celine smiled. "People should hear your story." Charlie agreed. The interview took place inside the warehouse instead of a studio. The reporter looked around. "You've built one of New England's most respected logistics companies." Charlie smiled. "A lot of people built it." She continued. 8 years ago, you walked away from family wealth." Charlie nodded. "I walked toward something more important." "What was that?" "My wife." The reporter smiled. "And today?" Charlie looked toward employees loading trucks. "The people standing behind me." She asked another question. "What's the secret to your success?" Charlie answered immediately. "We never treated people like numbers." The interview aired nationwide the following weekend. Viewers across the country watched Charlie tell his story. They saw old photographs of the small garage where the business had started. They saw Grace and Gabriel laughing inside the warehouse. They saw Libby working beside Charlie during the company's early years. They heard farmers describe how Charlie had saved their businesses. School administrators spoke about dependable deliveries. Hospital directors praised the company's commitment. The stories spread quickly. Newspapers shared it. Business magazines published feature articles. Television programs invited Charlie to speak about leadership. He accepted only a few invitations. He preferred spending time with his family and employees. One Monday morning, Charlie arrived at work as usual. Nothing about his routine had changed. He still greeted drivers. He still checked delivery schedules. He still walked through the warehouse before entering his office. Rhett walked toward him, holding a newspaper. Without saying a word, he placed it on Charlie's desk. Charlie's photograph covered the front page. The headline described him as one of the most respected business leaders in New England. Charlie smiled. "I never expected this." Rhett laughed. "You earned it." Charlie folded the newspaper and set it aside. "Let's get to work." Outside his office, employees were already preparing the day's deliveries. Inside the Wallace estate in Greenwich, that same newspaper landed on the breakfast table. Charlie's father looked down at the front page. His hand stopped moving. His mother slowly picked up the paper. Neither of them spoke. Across the table, Uncle Harlan stared at Charlie's photograph. Brenner quietly read every word of the article. For the first time in 8 years, the Wallace family realized exactly what Charlie had built without them. None of them could ignore it anymore. The newspaper remained on the Wallace family's table long after breakfast ended. 8 years after turning Charlie away, they finally understood that the son they had rejected had become a man the entire country respected. Before the week was over, that discovery would send them to the one place they never imagined they would return: Charlie's front door. Charlie stood beside Libby as the black SUV remained in the driveway. His father stepped out first. His mother followed. Uncle Harlan climbed out without looking around. Brenner closed the rear door. Cedric carried a leather briefcase. 8 years had changed all of them. Charlie noticed gray hair where there hadn't been any before. His father looked older. His mother looked tired. None of them looked like the confident people who had ordered him out of the Wallace estate. Grace held Charlie's hand. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Are they really your family?" Charlie nodded. "They are." Gabriel looked at the visitors. "Then why have they never been here before?" No one answered. Grace looked at Charlie's mother. "Are you my grandma?" Charlie's mother struggled to smile. "Yes." Grace smiled politely. "I've never had a grandma visit before." Charlie's mother's eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Gabriel stepped closer to Charlie's father. "Are you my grandpa?" Charlie watched his father's face. "Yes." Gabriel smiled. "I thought grandpas came to birthday parties." The driveway became completely still. Charlie looked at his father. For the first time in 8 years, the older man had no answer. Grace continued asking questions with the honesty only a child could have. "Did you know when we were born?" Charlie's mother quietly nodded. "Yes." "Did you see our baby pictures?" "No." Grace frowned. "Why not?" Again, nobody answered. Gabriel looked confused. "We have lots of pictures." He pointed toward the house. "Dad keeps them in the living room." Charlie watched his parents lower their heads. Libby stood quietly beside him. She knew Charlie had never spoken badly about his family in front of the children. Grace looked back at Charlie. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Did we do something wrong?" Charlie immediately knelt beside her. "No." "Then why didn't they come?" Charlie looked at his father. He waited. He hoped someone from the Wallace family would finally answer. No one did. Charlie gently spoke. "You didn't do anything wrong." Grace accepted the answer. She walked over to Libby. Gabriel stayed beside Charlie. He looked at his grandfather again. "I learned how to ride my bike." His father nodded quietly. "That's wonderful." Gabriel smiled. "Dad taught me." Charlie's father forced a small smile. "I'm sure he did." Gabriel continued. "I scored my first soccer goal." "That's great." "I looked for you." The older man's smile disappeared. Gabriel didn't notice. "I thought maybe you were busy." Charlie closed his eyes for a moment. The simple words hit harder than any argument. Aunt Corinne had often said that children tell the truth without trying to hurt anyone. Charlie understood exactly what she meant. Grace suddenly remembered something. She ran inside the house. A few moments later, she returned carrying a family photo album. She sat on the porch steps and opened it. "Look." She pointed to the first page. "This was my first day of school." She turned another page. "This was Gabriel's soccer team." Another page. "This was our Christmas." She smiled proudly. "Mom makes hot chocolate every year." Gabriel leaned over the album. "This was when Dad taught me to fish." Grace kept turning pages. Every photograph showed birthdays, school programs, family vacations, church picnics, community events. Every memory included Charlie and Libby. The Wallace family appeared in none of them. Grace finally looked up. "I guess you weren't there." Charlie's mother quietly wiped away tears. She could no longer hide the pain on her face. Charlie said nothing. The album had already said everything that needed to be said. Cedric cleared his throat. "Charlie." Charlie looked at him. "We know this isn't the right place for a long conversation." Charlie nodded. "I agree." Cedric spoke carefully. "We would like to meet with you tomorrow." Charlie didn't answer immediately. He looked toward Grace and Gabriel. Both children were still sitting on the porch, looking through the album together. They deserved peace, not another painful scene. Charlie looked back at Cedric. Tomorrow. Cedric nodded. If that works for you. It does. Charlie's father finally spoke. Thank you. Charlie remained calm. We'll talk tomorrow. Without another word, the Wallace family slowly returned to the SUV. Grace watched them leave. She looked up at Charlie. Dad? Yes. Will they come back? Charlie looked down the road as the SUV disappeared from sight. Yes. Grace smiled. Maybe this time they'll stay longer. Charlie looked at Libby, then at his children. He knew tomorrow's meeting would not be about business. It would be about 8 years of choices that could no longer be ignored. Charlie barely slept that night, not because he was angry, because he wanted the next day's meeting to be fair. He refused to let anyone claim later that words had been twisted or hidden. Before leaving for work, he called Cedric. I've agreed to the meeting. Thank you. There will be one condition. Cedric listened. I want every conversation to happen openly. What do you mean? I want a neutral person present. Cedric paused briefly. That's reasonable. Charlie continued. I don't want private conversations. I understand. The call ended. Charlie immediately contacted Pastor Elias. The pastor had married Charlie and Libby 8 years earlier. He had also guided many families through difficult conversations. Charlie trusted him to remain fair to everyone. Pastor Elias listened carefully. I'll be there. I don't want anyone taking sides. I won't. I only want the truth. You have my word. Charlie thanked him. That afternoon, Libby prepared the dining room. Nothing about the house changed. No expensive decorations, no attempt to impress anyone. She simply arranged enough chairs for everyone. Grace watched her. Are we having visitors again? Libby smiled. Yes. The same people? Yes. Grace nodded. Can Gabriel and I stay? Libby looked at Charlie. Charlie answered gently. You'll be home. But this conversation is for adults. Grace accepted the answer. Gabriel looked at Charlie. Are they still our family? Charlie smiled. They've always been family. Gabriel thought for a moment. Families should tell the truth. Charlie nodded. They should. The next morning arrived. Shortly after 10 o'clock, the black SUV stopped outside the house again. Charlie opened the front door before anyone knocked. His father stepped forward. Thank you for meeting with us. Charlie nodded. Come in. The Wallace family entered quietly. Cedric carried the same leather briefcase. Pastor Elias stood and greeted everyone. Thank you all for coming. Charlie's father looked surprised. I wasn't expecting anyone else. Charlie answered immediately. I wanted someone everyone could trust. His father nodded. I understand. Everyone sat down. Charlie and Libby sat together. Across from them sat Charlie's father, his mother, Uncle Harlan, Brenner, and Cedric. Pastor Elias sat between both sides. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Finally, Pastor Elias broke the silence. We're here for one reason. He looked around the room. To speak honestly. Everyone agreed. Cedric opened his briefcase. He removed several folders. Charlie immediately understood. This meeting had been carefully planned. Cedric placed the papers on the table. I'll explain why we're here. Charlie nodded. Go ahead. Cedric looked at Charlie. The Wallace family businesses have suffered major financial losses. Charlie listened without interrupting. Cedric continued. Several investments failed. He opened another folder. Commercial properties lost value. Another document followed. The manufacturing division accumulated significant debt. Charlie remained calm. Cedric continued explaining. Several lenders are demanding immediate repayment. Charlie's father lowered his head. For the first time in decades, Cedric said, the Wallace family no longer has enough liquid assets to meet every obligation. Charlie quietly folded his hands. He still said nothing. Cedric continued. We've already sold several properties. Charlie's mother looked down. The vacation homes are gone. The investment portfolio has been reduced. The private aircraft has been sold. Charlie remembered how proud his father had once been of those possessions. Now, They were gone. Cedric opened the final folder. "This is why we've come." Charlie looked directly at him. Cedric spoke carefully. "We're asking for your help." Charlie waited. Cedric continued reading. "The Wallace family would like financial assistance to stabilize remaining businesses." He turned another page. "They're requesting access to your company's transportation network until their operations recover." Another page. "They're asking you to personally guarantee several refinancing agreements." Charlie listened without reacting. Cedric wasn't finished. "They would also like advisory positions within your company." Charlie slowly raised his eyes. Cedric continued. "They believe your business experience could restore the Wallace companies." Charlie looked at every face around the table. No one interrupted. Cedric read the final request. "They hope to rebuild the relationship between both families." The room became quiet. Charlie finally spoke. "Is that everything?" Cedric nodded. "Yes." Charlie looked at his father. "You agree with every request?" His father answered quietly. "I do." Charlie turned toward Uncle Harlan. "And you?" "Yes." He looked at Brenner. "Yes." Finally, Charlie looked at his mother. She struggled to meet his eyes. "I do." Charlie leaned back in his chair. 8 years earlier, they had taken everything from him. Now they were asking for nearly everything he had spent 8 years building. He remained completely calm. Pastor Elias looked toward Charlie. "You've heard their requests." Charlie nodded. "I have." Pastor Elias continued. "Tomorrow we can discuss possible solutions." Charlie shook his head gently. "No." Everyone looked at him. "We'll discuss them now." Charlie folded his hands on the table. "There are some questions that need answers before we talk about money." No one spoke. Charlie looked around the room. For the first time since the meeting began, the Wallace family realized this conversation was no longer under their control. Charlie looked around the dining table. Every person who had once turned their back on him was now waiting for his answer. He spoke calmly. "Before we discuss a single dollar, I want to understand something." Nobody interrupted. Charlie looked at his father. "When I left the Wallace estate 8 years ago, did you believe I would fail?" His father answered quietly. "Yes." Charlie nodded. "You believed I would come back?" "Yes." "You expected me to ask for help?" His father lowered his eyes. "Yes." Charlie looked at his mother. "When Grace and Gabriel were born, did you ever try to visit them?" Her voice shook. "No." "Did you send a birthday card?" "No." "A Christmas gift?" She wiped away tears. "No." Charlie continued. "Did you ever call Libby?" She slowly shook her head. "No." Charlie turned to Uncle Harlan. "You told my father to make me choose between my family and my wife." "I did." "Do you regret saying it?" Uncle Harlan hesitated. "Yes." Charlie answered immediately. "Do you regret saying it because it was wrong, or because I succeeded without you?" The room became silent. Uncle Harlan couldn't answer. Charlie looked toward Brenner. "You were in the library that day." "Yes." "You watched me lose everything." "I did." "You never spoke." Brenner nodded. "I didn't." Charlie looked directly at him. "Why?" "I believed your father was protecting the family." Charlie replied calmly. "No." He was protecting his pride. Nobody challenged him. Charlie turned toward Cedric. "You prepared every legal document." "I did." "You removed my inheritance." "Yes." "You ended my position in the family business." "Yes." "You closed every financial account connected to my name." Cedric nodded. "Yes." Charlie folded his hands. "You did your job." Cedric answered honestly. "I did." Charlie nodded respectfully. "I've never blamed you for that." Cedric lowered his head. "Thank you." Charlie looked back at his father. "I have another question." His father nodded. "If my company had failed." Charlie didn't look away. "If I had lost everything." He continued. "If Libby and I were still struggling to pay our bills." He leaned forward. "Would you be sitting in my dining room today?" His father said nothing. Charlie waited. The question remained between them. Pastor Elias finally spoke. "Please answer him." Charlie's father closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with regret. "No." Charlie remained calm. "You wouldn't have come." "No." Charlie looked at his mother. "Would you have come?" She quietly cried, "No." He turned toward Uncle Harlan. "What about you?" "No." Brenner answered before Charlie asked. "I wouldn't have come either." Charlie slowly nodded. "Thank you." No anger entered his voice. No bitterness. Only truth. He looked around the table. "That's the first honest conversation we've had in 8 years." Nobody disagreed. Charlie continued, "You didn't come because you missed me." His father lowered his head. "You came because you need me." No one denied it. Charlie looked at Libby. She quietly listened beside him. Then he looked back at the Wallace family. 8 years ago, I married the woman I loved." He smiled at Libby. "I lost money. I lost property. I lost a family name." He looked at Grace and Gabriel's drawings hanging on the refrigerator. "But I gained a wife who never stopped believing in me." He continued, "I gained 2 beautiful children. I gained friends who became family. I built a business with people who trusted each other." He looked back at his father. "I never spent one day wishing I had chosen differently." His father wiped away tears. "I know." Charlie spoke gently. "Do you remember what you told me before I left?" His father nodded. "I remember. You said the Wallace name was worth more than anything else." Charlie smiled softly. "I spent 8 years learning something different." Everyone listened. A name means nothing if the people carrying it refuse to live with honesty. Pastor Elias nodded quietly. Charlie looked at every member of the Wallace family. "I'm not saying this to embarrass you. I'm saying it because my children deserve to know the truth." He pointed toward the hallway where Grace and Gabriel were playing. "They're watching how adults solve problems. They're learning from every decision we make." Charlie looked at Libby. "They've watched their mother forgive people. They've watched their father keep his promises." He looked back at his family. "I want them to become adults who value character more than success." His father quietly asked, "Is there any way to repair what we've broken?" Charlie didn't answer immediately. He thought about every birthday, every Christmas, every school program, every hospital visit, every ordinary family moment the Wallace family had chosen to miss. Nothing could return those years. Nothing could erase them. Charlie finally spoke. "The past cannot be changed." His father nodded. "I know, but the future is still being written." Every person at the table listened carefully. Charlie looked once more toward Grace and Gabriel. For 8 years, every decision he had made was for them. Now another decision stood before him. Whatever he chose next would teach his children what forgiveness truly meant, or what justice required. Charlie remained seated after everyone fell quiet. The Wallace family waited for his decision. Libby watched him with complete confidence. Grace and Gabriel laughed together in the next room, unaware that the choice their father was about to make would become one of the most important lessons of their lives. Charlie looked around the dining table. Everyone waited for his answer. He spoke calmly. "I've listened to everything you've said." His father nodded. Charlie continued, "I've also listened to what you didn't say." Nobody interrupted. "You asked me to save your businesses. You asked me to guarantee your loans. You asked for positions inside my company." He looked at each family member. Not one of those requests has anything to do with rebuilding a family. His father lowered his head. Charlie continued, "Those requests are about protecting a lifestyle." No one argued. Charlie folded his hands. "I'm not going to finance privilege." Cedric quietly closed one of the folders. Charlie looked at him. "You can put those papers away." Cedric nodded and set them aside. Charlie turned back to his father. "If you're asking me to restore everything exactly as it was before, my answer is no." His father accepted the answer. "I understand." Charlie continued, "I won't guarantee loans. I won't hand over leadership positions. I won't place people inside my company because they're related to me." Uncle Harlan shifted in his chair. Charlie looked at him. Everyone who works for this company earned the opportunity. He pointed toward the window where several company trucks could be seen leaving the warehouse. They worked hard for years. I'm not taking that away from them. Pastor Elias nodded quietly. Charlie continued, but there is something I will do. Everyone looked at him. I'll help people. His father raised his eyes. Charlie spoke clearly. I won't rescue pride. I will help honest effort. The room became quiet. Charlie reached for a folder beside him. Inside were several documents. I spent last night preparing these. He handed one copy to Cedric, another to his father. The first page explained Charlie's proposal. If any Wallace business is still capable of operating honestly, my company will consider normal service contracts. He continued, the contracts will be reviewed exactly the same way we review every other customer. No Balium special treatment. No family discounts. No hidden favors. Cedric slowly read the pages. Charlie continued, if individual family members need work, they may apply. Uncle Harlan looked surprised. Charlie continued, they'll go through the same hiring process as everyone else. No executive offices. No titles. No exceptions. His father quietly asked, what if someone qualifies? Charlie answered immediately, then they'll earn the position. The older man slowly nodded. Charlie looked toward Brenner. If someone wants advice on rebuilding honestly, I'll recommend experienced consultants. He looked at Celine's business card attached to one page. My accountant has helped many businesses recover. Charlie smiled slightly. She charges everyone the same. Even Cedric smiled. Charlie continued, if debts can be reorganized legally, do it. If businesses need better management, hire better managers. If spending created the problem, reduce spending. He looked directly at his father. There are solutions. They simply require work. His father quietly admitted, we were hoping for something easier. Charlie nodded. I know. Then he looked around the room. The easy answer created this problem. Nobody disagreed. Charlie leaned back. My company exists because people accepted responsibility. They admitted mistakes. They worked. They changed. He pointed toward the paperwork. Those same principles can help anyone. His mother quietly asked, so, you're refusing us? Charlie shook his head. I'm refusing entitlement. He looked at her kindly. I'm offering opportunity. The difference was impossible to miss. Charlie stood and walked toward the living room window. Outside, Grace and Gabriel were playing catch in the yard. He smiled. When my children ask what happened here today, I want to tell them the truth. He turned back toward the table. I didn't punish anyone. I also didn't reward the choices that hurt others. Pastor Elias smiled. That's an important difference. Charlie nodded. I believe people deserve another chance. He looked at every member of the Wallace family. But another chance begins with responsibility. His father slowly closed the folder. For the first time since arriving, he understood that Charlie wasn't speaking like the young man who had walked away from the Wallace estate. He was speaking like a leader who had spent 8 years earning the respect that money could never buy. Nobody spoke for several moments. Charlie's words settled over the room. His father looked down at the proposal again. He slowly closed the folder. I never imagined this conversation would end this way. Charlie answered calmly. It hasn't ended. It has finally become honest. Uncle Harlan pushed his chair back. I still don't agree. Charlie looked at him. You don't have to. Uncle Harlan stood. The Wallace family shouldn't have to apply for jobs. Charlie answered immediately. The Wallace name doesn't qualify anyone to work in my company. It used to. Charlie shook his head. Not here. Uncle Harlan looked around the room. So that's it? Charlie nodded. That's it. You'd rather watch your own family struggle? Charlie remained calm. I watched my wife struggle. I watched my children spend weeks in intensive care. I worked every day to pay those hospital bills. He looked directly at Uncle Harlan. Nobody from this family came to help. The room became quiet again. Uncle Harlan picked up his coat. "I won't accept this." Charlie nodded. "That's your choice." Without another word, Uncle Harlan walked out of the house. The front door closed behind him. Brenner remained seated. He stared at the table for several seconds. Finally, he looked at Charlie. "I owe you an apology." Charlie listened. "I watched your father disown you. I said nothing. I convinced myself it wasn't my place." He lowered his head. "I was wrong." Charlie nodded. "I appreciate your honesty." Brenner continued. "I can't change those years." "No, but I can admit I failed you." Charlie looked at him. "That's the first step." Brenner slowly stood. "I don't expect anything from you." He extended his hand. "I only wanted to tell you the truth." Charlie stood and shook his hand. "Thank you." Brenner quietly left the house. Only Charlie's father, his mother, Cedric, Pastor Elias, Libby, and Charlie remained. Charlie's mother finally looked toward Libby. For years she had avoided looking at her for more than a few seconds. Now she couldn't look away. She slowly stood. Then she walked across the room. She stopped in front of Libby. Libby remained seated. Charlie's mother spoke with tears in her eyes. 8 years ago, she struggled to continue. "I judged you before I knew you." Libby listened quietly. "I never gave you a chance." Charlie's mother looked down. "I believed things that should never have mattered." She raised her eyes again. "I believed your skin color made you the wrong woman for my son." The room became completely still. Nobody interrupted. Charlie's mother continued. "I told myself I was protecting my family." She shook her head. "I wasn't. I was protecting my own prejudice." The words were difficult to say. Everyone knew it. She looked at Libby again. "You have been a better wife." She glanced toward Charlie. "Than I ever believed possible." She looked toward the family photographs on the wall. "You stood beside my son when I abandoned him." She pointed toward the pictures of Grace and Gabriel. "You gave Charlie the family I refused to accept." Tears rolled down her face. "I'm deeply sorry." Libby stood. She looked at Charlie. Charlie gave a small nod. Libby turned back toward Charlie's mother. "I've waited a long time to hear those words." Charlie's mother nodded. "I know." Libby continued. "I never wanted revenge. I only wanted to be treated with respect." Charlie's mother quietly answered, "You deserved that from the beginning." Libby smiled gently. "Thank you." Without hesitation, Charlie's mother embraced Libby. Libby returned the hug. Charlie watched silently. He wasn't watching two women erase the past. He was watching one woman finally admit the truth. Pastor Elias smiled. "Real healing always begins with honesty." Cedric closed his notebook. "I've attended many difficult meetings." He looked around the room. "I've never seen one where people finally stopped defending themselves." Charlie's father slowly stood. He walked toward Libby. "I owe you an apology too." Libby faced him. "I believed you would ruin Charlie's future." He looked toward the window. "I was blind." He turned back to her. "The truth is..." He smiled sadly. "You gave him the future I could never have given him." Libby answered softly. "We built it together." Charlie's father nodded. "Yes." He looked at Charlie. "And I spent 8 years refusing to see it." Charlie didn't interrupt. His father continued. "I judged you because of who you married." He looked at Libby again. "I should have judged myself by how I treated people instead." Charlie could see something had changed, not because the words sounded perfect, because they finally sounded sincere. Grace and Gabriel suddenly ran into the house laughing. They stopped when they saw everyone standing together. Grace looked at Libby. "Mom?" "Yes?" "Is everything okay?" Libby smiled. "It is." Gabriel looked at Charlie's mother. "Are you crying?" She smiled through her tears. "A little." Grace walked over and handed her a tissue from the coffee table. "My mom says people shouldn't stay sad forever." Charlie's mother accepted it with shaking hands. "Your mom is very wise." Grace smiled proudly. "I know. Charlie looked at Libby. After 8 years, the respect that had been denied to her was finally spoken aloud in front of everyone who had once refused to give it. No amount of money could have made that moment more meaningful. Grace looked around the room. She could tell something important had happened. She walked over to Charlie. "Dad?" Charlie smiled. "Yes? Is everyone friends now?" Charlie looked at the people standing around him. Then he looked at Grace. "Not yet." Grace tilted her head. "Why?" Charlie knelt beside her. "Because trust takes time." She nodded. "But it can happen." Charlie smiled. "Yes, if people tell the truth. And if they change." Grace accepted the answer. She took Gabriel's hand and returned to the backyard. The adults watched them through the window. Charlie stood again. He looked at his father. "You asked if our family can be repaired." His father nodded. "I did." Charlie answered without hesitation. "It can." Hope appeared on his father's face. Charlie continued, "But not by pretending the past never happened." His father slowly nodded. "I understand." Charlie spoke clearly. "If you want a relationship with Grace and Gabriel, you'll earn it." Nobody objected. "You'll come to birthdays. You'll come to school programs. You'll keep your promises. You'll build trust one visit at a time." His mother answered immediately, "We will." Charlie looked at his father. "If you cancel plans without a real reason, don't expect the children to understand." "I won't." "If you make a promise, keep it." "I will." Charlie continued, "My children will never wonder whether they're good enough." His father lowered his head. "They never should." Charlie looked toward Libby. "My wife will always be treated with respect." His mother answered first. "She will." His father nodded. "She has my respect." Charlie looked at Cedric. "I don't need legal agreements." Cedric smiled. "I didn't think you would." "I need actions." Pastor Elias nodded. "That's how trust grows." Charlie walked to the family photographs hanging on the wall. He pointed to one picture. Grace stood beside Gabriel on the first day of school. Another showed the twins helping Charlie plant flowers. Another showed Libby laughing while everyone carved pumpkins in the fall. Charlie smiled. "These are the years you missed." His father quietly replied, "I know." "You can't get them back." "I know, but you can decide what the next 8 years look like." Charlie's father looked at the photographs. "I want to be part of them." Charlie answered calmly, "Then start showing up." His father nodded. "I will." Charlie's mother looked at Libby. "May I ask something?" Libby smiled. "You may, when you're ready." She hesitated. "Would you allow us to know Grace and Gabriel?" Libby looked at Charlie. He gave a small nod. She answered kindly, "They deserve grandparents who love them." She continued, "But they also deserve grandparents who stay." Charlie's mother wiped away another tear. "We'll stay." Charlie believed she meant it. Whether they proved it would depend on the months ahead. Brenner quietly returned to the doorway. He had forgotten his coat. Charlie smiled. "You can come back in." Brenner laughed softly. "I thought I should knock this time." Everyone smiled. The tension that had filled the house was finally gone. Not because every problem had disappeared, because everyone had finally stopped hiding from the truth. Charlie's father slowly walked toward him. "I don't expect you to call me Dad today." Charlie looked at him. "But I hope one day you'll want to." Charlie thought about everything that had happened. The library inside the Wallace estate. The years of silence. The birthdays. The holidays. The missed opportunities. He also thought about Grace and Gabriel. They had watched everything. They were learning what forgiveness looked like. Charlie extended his hand. His father looked at it, then shook it firmly. Charlie smiled. "This is where we begin." His father smiled through tears. "Thank you." Moments later, Grace ran back into the house. "Dad!" Charlie turned. "What is it?" "We're starting another soccer game." She pointed outside. "Can everyone watch?" Charlie looked around the room. Then, at his father, "Would you like to?" His father smiled. "I'd love to." Everyone walked outside together. Grace placed the ball on the grass. Gabriel stood beside her. Charlie and Libby sat on the porch. Charlie's mother and father stood nearby. For the first time, they watched their grandchildren play. No one spoke about business. No one spoke about money. No one spoke about inheritance. None of it mattered. Charlie watched Grace laugh after scoring a goal. Gabriel chased the ball across the yard. Libby slipped her hand into his. "You all right?" Charlie smiled. "I've never been better." She leaned against him. "You built everything you dreamed of." Charlie looked at his wife. "We built it." He looked across the yard again. 8 years earlier, he had walked away from a famous family name with nothing except the woman he loved. People believed he had lost everything. They were wrong. He had gained a wife who never stopped believing in him. He had gained children who filled his home with joy. He had gained friends who became family. He had built a company that helped people instead of using them. Most importantly, he had built a life where love mattered more than status, promises mattered more than wealth, and character mattered more than reputation. The Wallace name no longer defined who Charlie was. His life did. As the sun settled over the yard, Grace laughed again. Gabriel called for Charlie to join the game. Charlie stood immediately. "I'm coming." Libby smiled as she watched him run toward their children. At that moment, Charlie understood what true wealth had always been. It was never inherited through a famous name. It was created by the people who chose one another every single day through love, integrity, sacrifice, respect, and forgiveness. And that kind of legacy would outlive every fortune.